Next Sunday is our Bible quiz. So I welcome you all to my house next Sunday, 11 a.m. So I want to see you all. It's going to be by house churches. Let's compete, but let's excel in studying the Word of the Lord. Now we've been looking at the book of Esther so far 4 weeks, and next week is our last Sunday for this series of sermon. And first week we looked at how God is invisible, but He's still in control. And the past 2 weeks we've looked at two villains in the Bible. One is Xerxes, and the other is Haman. By looking at them, we revealed how impatient and how they were full of rage, and then how they were led by their own wills, not by the Lord. Now we are finally at the good side. We're looking at Mordecai, and next week we look at Esther. But even though we're moving from the villains to the good guys, we should not think that Mordecai is our spiritual hero. We should not think that he's a complete and blameless person. We should never consider a person in the Bible as a complete, the person we can replace God, even though that is the faith of our father of our faith. It means two things. First, no one other than God should be described as a Lord of the history. No human person can be described other than God as the Lord of the history, because it is serious idolatry. God does not allow no one take His glory. Only Him should be our Lord. And second, a lot of people make this mistake. By reading the Bible, they try to find the formula of success. For example, if you do this and that like Daniel did, you can success. If you do this, do that like Joseph did, you can success. But we should never find the story of success in the story of the Bible, biblical figures, because Bible is not about our success, but it is about God's work through us. Our focus should not be these individuals, but God's kingdom, how it is expanded, how it maintained and continue through all these worldly histories. Mordecai today we'll look at is the same. Of course he did great things. Of course he achieved a lot. But the point of his story is not how great he was, how successful he was, but the point of it is how God worked through his life. Again, we have to be able to see invisible hand in the story of Mordecai. Mordecai, as described in the book of Esther, is king without a crown. He achieved many things, and he has many elements and narrative to be a hero, but he was never considered a heroic figure in the book of in the Old Testament. End of March, the Jewish people will celebrate the festival of Purim as their liberation day. But Protestants, we have less respect to him than Jewish people. And his name is never mentioned in the New Testament. And as you read the book of Hebrews chapter 11, this chapter 11 goes through all these historical figures in the Bible, Abraham, Moses, but it doesn't mention the name of Mordecai, even though Mordecai saved his entire people from the Persia. Today, I'm going to look at 3 things of what Mordecai did in this book. But the point is, again, not to elevate him as complete and perfect person. But by looking at what he did, what we're trying to find is how the author of Book of Esther describes him as resembling to someone else in the book of the Bible. For example, what I mean is this. The author of Esther describes Mordecai in a way that the reader could think, oh, this Mordecai resembles someone. This Mordecai is similar to someone in our history. First, he was an example of faithfulness. He was a model of faithfulness. In the land, and he was captured, but he kept his identity as Jewish people. He did not bow to Haman, and he risked the danger of not bowing to Haman. You might remember, if you study hard in book of Esther, you may remember the scene where Mordecai revealed himself as a Jewish by not obeying Haman. The officials in the Susa palace, they asked Mordecai, why do you not obey? Why do you not bow to Haman? And he told them, I'm a Jewish. That's why I don't bow to him. He revealed that his action is coming out of his faith conviction that I am the one who serves the Lord only. I can never worship or bow to any man or any idols. Haman knew this fact. That's why he tried to kill not only one person, Mordecai, but the entire people of Jewish. Haman knew that it's not one person's individual decision, but it comes out of these people's faith. These people of Jew, they would never bow to Haman. So Haman knew that. That's why he tried to kill entire people of Jews. We have one figure here that resembles to him, which is Daniel. Not one figure, but his three friends too. They risked their lives by not bowing to any idols in Babylon. They kept their faith to God. They heard the command, they heard the order, everyone in the country should bow to statue of the king, but they did not bow. And they were captured, they were standing in front of the king. They told the king, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And they continue, he will deliver us from your majesty's hand, but even if he does not, we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. They already have this example of being faithful to God and risking their lives. Daniel himself, he faced the same difficulties later. He heard the command, king's command, do not worship any other gods in the country, but only king. He knew the consequence if he break the law, but he continued to worship and pray to God 3 times a day toward Jerusalem. And he was thrown into the lion's den. He faced the danger of risking his life. And the people of Israel, as they read the story of Mordecai, they instantly thought of Daniel and 3 friends, because they're so similar. And the readers would remind once again Mordecai, Daniel, and friends their conviction and their commitment. And second, Mordecai, he achieved great things. He made a great success, even in worldly perspective. In the land, he was captured as a refugee, but he first started off his career as a law officer in the palace, and later he reached up to the second powerful place in the entire empire. Esther chapter 10, verse 3 describes this well. It says, Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews, and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews, because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. Becoming second in rank to King Xerxes means that he became the second powerful person in the country that reaches from Africa to India, that has 127 provinces. And we have the similar story in the story of the Bible too. One who was sold to Egypt as a slave and later became second powerful person in Egypt, who was Joseph. And again, Daniel, who In the land, he took captive in Babylon and Persia, and he later became the second powerful person in that empire. Think about the first reader of this book again. The first reader of book of Esther. Because this book was written in 400 before Jesus came. The latter part of Persian Empire, when Persian Empire was still in power. There was no expectation this empire will be destroyed soon. It is strong and in up there. Let's put ourselves into Hebrews' perspective. The people of God who was chosen by God, but they were still living under the rule of Gentile people. They've been under the power of Assyria, Babylon, and Persia. There's no hope of liberation. And in this situation, Hebrew always waited for the one who delivers them from this situation. And by reading the story of Mordecai, they would identify themselves with this Mordecai, and they would wait for the deliverance. And then 400 years later, in Jesus' time, the situation was the same. Nothing changed. Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greek, and now Rome, people of Israel, they still feel the same way. We're still in this situation, constant, continuous Gentile peoples ruling over us, and no one deliver us. They felt like they were living in the land of Gentiles. And it is the same to us Christians too. Even though we're not living as a slave or refugee, but we're living in a land where the evil power is in control. We're living in a situation where God is not seen. We're living in a situation where people does not acknowledge God as their Lord. In this situation, we're waiting for someone who delivers us. As we read the book of Mordecai, we should be able to read with an expectation someone comes to us and delivers us from this situation. Because what the author trying to say through the story of Mordecai is achievement of one person is never meant to that person only. Achievement or success is never individual or personal. It is always for the greater purpose. So if God allows you, if God gave you certain level of achievement or success, you always have to remember what is the reason, why God gave me this success. God always had greater purpose in our success. And thirdly, he became the deliverer of Israel people through this expectation. Mordecai saved the entire people of Israel in the Persian Empire. But one thing we want to note is that his behavior is never rewarded immediately. What he did has had a consequence, but consequence came much, much later. One example is that he was in a palace of Susa, and he saw the process of dethroning of Queen Vashti and electing a new queen. And he gave an advice to Esther, do not reveal where you're coming from. Later, by not revealing where she's coming from, it became it made Haman to fall on his trap. Haman, when he planned this plot against all Jewish people, he did not know the Queen Esther was Jew. And later, Mordecai saved the king from danger by reporting people's plot. But his action was not rewarded immediately. But this was recorded in the book of Chronicles, and later, much, much later, his action was rewarded, but much greater extent, bigger reward. All these things, all this behavior became the background, the setting of he's delivering his people. And finally, he heard the plot of Haman to kill all the Jews, and he sent the man to Queen Esther, pleading from King Xerxes. And when Queen Esther did not make up her mind, Mordecai proclaimed this to Queen. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? And he, with other Jews in the palace, prayed for Esther for the process. And through this, he became a national hero of delivering his people, not only in the palace Susa, but in entire Persian Empire. Being a deliverer of Israel people, we have one more person in our mind. The time even Israel became a nation. Joseph, who was sold into slave and became a higher place of prime minister and saved his own father and the brothers from the famine. So in many ways, Mordecai resembled the story of Joseph and Daniel. So as we read the Mordecai story, we hear and we read the stories of Daniel and Joseph's story. Now let us back again to the first reader of Esther once again. First readers of Esther who were living in Persian Empire, waiting for the deliverance in a situation where their own God deserted them. And they're in a situation where they were living in constant life of slavery. That's why they read the story of Mordecai fascinating. And they find Joseph and Daniel's story in the story of Mordecai. And then we should be able to read the Mordecai the same way. Because we, like I said, in many ways, similar to the Jewish people living in Persia and Babylon. The world around us serves different God than us. And in this situation, serving and worshiping God requires a sacrifice. We know the stories of how hard it is to find a job that does not require Friday nights and Sunday. We all know the story of how hard it is to live in a work environment where people around us have different perspectives and very hostile toward Christianity. It is hard to live faithfully in this world and serve one God. Maybe the different danger, maybe not the same danger as Daniel and Mordecai faced, the danger of death. But we always have this danger of risking our time, relationship, and big and small disadvantages. The world does not directly ask us to bow to Haman, bow to King Darius, but they come in different forms of temptation. Worship Haman, worship Darius. Do not worship your God. So we are like Hebrew people living in Babylon or Persia. We should be able to read the story of Mordecai with the same expectation, same hope as the first reader of this book read through Mordecai. There's one more person, Old Testament figure, we could think of as we read the story of Mordecai, other than Daniel, other than Joseph, which is King Saul. Esther chapter 2, verse 5 revealed Mordecai's tribe. It says, in the fortress Susa lived a Jew by the name of Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjamite. The most famous person among Benjamin tribe is King Saul. So when Jewish people, they heard this story of Benjamite, they immediately think of King Saul. Oh, this person, Mordecai, is coming from King Saul's family line. And by saying son of Kish, son of Shimei, both of them are related to King Saul, the author makes sure that this person is in the line of King Saul, but not in a positive way. Because King Saul is not a good model to follow after. The author says Mordecai is in the line of King Saul. He tried to emphasize that fact because of Haman. Chapter 3, verse 1 introduces Haman as son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. Meaning, Haman is coming from the family of Agag, the king of Amalekite. So author here contrasts Mordecai with Haman and their ancestors Saul and Agag. 1 Samuel chapter 15, Agag's name first appeared as a king of Amalekite. But Agag is not a name of one person. Agag is a title of supreme ruler of a country. As we call a supreme ruler of Egypt as Pharaoh, Agag is a supreme ruler of Amalekite. Chapter 15, the prophet Samuel told King Saul, attack Amalekite and kill everyone and kill Agag and destroy everything. But Saul disobeyed, maybe partially obeyed. Let me read some verses from chapter 15 of 1 Samuel. Verse 3, Samuel tells Saul, now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. So it makes it clear that destroy everything. Do not spare anything. There's no room for negotiation. But in verse 8 and 9, it says, Saul took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive. And all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. So he obeyed the word of the Lord only half, partly. But Saul and the armies spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. So they spared what they thought was good. They were unwilling to destroy completely. But everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed. God's command was there's no compromise. But Saul and his men thought to themselves, made a compromise and obeyed the Lord only partially. And Agag was saved. By saving Agag, it symbolizes their disbelief, their disobedience. And out of that disobedience, God made it clear. God said it, I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Agag, under the hand of Saul, Agag thought that his life was saved. Because later in that chapter, Agag, when Samuel told Saul, bring Agag in front of me, there's this sentence that says, Agag thought to himself, surely the bitterness of death is past. So Agag thought to himself, oh, I am saved now. That's how Saul treated Agag. So in the Bible, for Jewish people's perspective, Agag is always a representation of disbelief from the beginning of Israel kingdom. So whoever hears the name Agag, they think of King Saul's disbelief. And out of that disbelief, God deserted him. And God left him. And people of Israel now in the land of Babylon and Persia, they feel that the situation we're in is a consequence of the disbelief in the beginning of our history. So the author, by contrasting Mordecai and Haman, and Saul and Agag, he's asking the reader, God is giving you one more chance. The chance to obey God. In your history, you failed once by saving the life of Agag. Now you get the second chance. What would you do? And Mordecai, by killing Haman and his sons, he demonstrates the action of obedience. So it's not simply about killing the sons of Haman. It's not the story of cruelty. It's a story of obeying God. It's a story of canceling their previous failure. When Saul disobeyed God, he saved something out of the property of Amalekite. When God told him, destroy everything, Saul took something out of it. And by doing that, he was telling God, I need something else than you. King Saul did not reject God. King Saul just added something other than God. God was telling him, rely only on me. But Saul was telling him, maybe the good part of the Amalekite's property will help me. So disobedient to God means that we're saying to him, we need something else than you. That is why God left Saul, and God regretted, made him a king. So what happened to Mordecai and the Israel people is a second chance God gives to them. Now they have one more chance to obey or disobey. And we read from the action of Mordecai, Mordecai fully undo the failure of King Saul. As the author of Esther was asking to the Jewish people in 4th century BC, the Bible is asking us the same thing. We have failed in many ways in our histories. Not only the human history, but our personal individual history. We failed, we disobeyed God many, many times. But God is asking us once again, He's giving us a second chance. Now what would you choose? Would you drive out all this disobedience from you? Would you kill all the Agag's sons and completely obey to me? Would you worship me only by not saving the good of the worldly properties? And he's asking us the same question. As we read the story of Mordecai, we should be able to read, we should be able to hear God's asking to us. He is challenging to us. Would you obey or disobey in your life? So as Israel people read Saul from the story of Mordecai, I challenge you to read your previous failure, your previous disobedience in your life from the story of Mordecai. And I challenge you to give thanks to God giving us this second chance. And I challenge you to answer Him with obedience. Let us pray. Pray together.